All right, buckle up. Let's dive into one of the lesser-known but incredibly impactful efforts of the American Revolution. The fight to save lives on the battlefield through the expansion of military hospitals and medical aid, led by none other than Dr. Benjamin Rush. Imagine it's a foggy morning in 1777. You're on the front lines of the American Revolution. Cannon fire roars, muskets crack, and the smell of gunpowder hangs thick in the air. It's chaos. Men shout, soldiers fall, and the wounded lie scattered, their cries a haunting soundtrack to the battle. The British and American forces clash, and as the smoke begins to clear, a grim reality settles over the field. The bodies lying on the ground, the wounded left with few options for survival. There's no organized medical system to care for them, yet. And that's exactly what some visionaries in the Continental Army noticed. Among them, a doctor named Benjamin Rush, a founding father whose contribution to the war effort was as crucial as any general's battle plan. As the Revolutionary War raged on, the number of wounded soldiers skyrocketed. And it wasn't just bullet wounds, soldiers were fighting infections, frostbite, disease, and even malnutrition. In those days, medicine was a rough practice. Think more field sawbones and bloodletting than sterile gauze and antibiotics. But Dr. Rush had a revolutionary idea of his own: organize a structured system of medical care within the Army, where soldiers could receive the best possible care given the circumstances. Back then, the medical aid available was rudimentary to say the least. Surgeons often had to perform amputations without anesthesia. Germ theory? That wouldn't be around for another 100 years. But Dr. Rush understood that even a basic level of organization and care could save lives, and possibly boost morale. After all, an army that saw its leaders genuinely care for its well-being might just fight that much harder. Dr. Benjamin Rush was already a respected physician in Philadelphia. When the Continental Congress declared independence, he decided to use his medical expertise to serve the Army. He was appointed Surgeon General of the Middle Department of the Continental Army, a role that gave him the authority and responsibility to initiate changes. And man, did he have ideas. Rush recognized that without proper hospitals, clean medical supplies, and trained personnel, soldiers' survival rates would be low. So he went to work, proposing a centralized system for military hospitals. He advocated for establishing hospitals far enough from the front lines to be safe, yet close enough for wounded soldiers to reach quickly. He wanted the facilities to be stocked with bandages, medications, and clean water, a luxury on a battlefield. Now it sounds basic, but back then, these ideas were practically groundbreaking. Rush pushed to implement a triage system where the severely wounded were prioritized for treatment, and he trained assistants in basic medical practices. His plans included setting up field hospitals and creating a medical supply chain, all while managing the limited resources of a young nation in the throes of war. But the journey wasn't easy. Funding was a huge hurdle. Congress was already stretched thin trying to support the troops, plus there were skeptics. Some officers and soldiers viewed the medical innovations as unnecessary luxuries, preferring to allocate resources to ammunition and provisions instead. Rush, however, was tenacious. He argued passionately that taking care of the soldiers was just as essential as supplying them with weapons. After all, what good was an army if most of it was too sick or injured to fight? On top of this, disease was a massive enemy of the Continental Army. Smallpox, dysentery, and typhus were rampant, claiming more lives than enemy fire. Rush understood that without preventive measures and organized care, disease would decimate the ranks. His advocacy led to one of the earliest large-scale inoculations for smallpox, a practice that would save countless soldiers' lives in the long run. Gradually, Rush's persistence paid off. Hospitals began to pop up closer to battlefields. He worked with other surgeons to ensure they understood basic sanitary practices, a primitive but essential step toward reducing infections. As Rush's system took shape, soldiers noticed a change. Knowing they had a better chance of survival encouraged them. The Army became not just a fighting force, but a more unified force that felt cared for. One of Rush's crowning achievements was advocating for the humane treatment of soldiers. He emphasized that soldiers weren't expendable. They were the heart of the revolution. And slowly, the mindset shifted. Soldiers saw that they weren't just pawns, they were individuals whose lives mattered. Rush's work with the Continental Army didn't just save lives during the war, it laid the foundation for modern military medicine. His principles of triage, field hospitals, and a structured medical support system would influence military operations long after the revolution ended. In fact, the advancements he made can still be seen today in how military medicine operates around the world. Though Rush would go on to accomplish much more in his life, including signing the Declaration of Independence, his contributions to the Continental Army's medical system were some of his most impactful. He showed that even in a time when resources were limited and beliefs about medicine were primitive, compassion and innovation could make all the difference. So next time you think of the American Revolution, remember that it wasn't just one with muskets and cannons, it was one with bandages, battlefield triage, and the tenacity of people like Dr. Benjamin Rush. His work was more than just medical innovation, it was a statement of humanity in the heart of war. Through sheer grit and an unyielding sense of duty, he changed the very concept of battlefield care, ensuring that American soldiers had a fighting chance, even when the odds seemed impossible.